get an audio check, please?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I can hear you just fine.
Great, thanks very much. Great, thank you. Okay, sorry about the delay, just had a delay getting my link here. So good evening and welcome to our virtual Committee of Adjustment meeting. Now, on your screen, you'll see members of our Committee of Adjustment. Behind the scenes, we have many staff members with us who have worked hard to make tonight's meeting possible. Our Secretary-Treasurer is Lindsay Stamen and our Clerk is Elizabeth Fawcett. Together, they are hosting tonight's meeting and running the Zoom platform from behind the scenes, so you will hear them chime in from time to time, although you might not see them. Now, the agenda and the schedules for the meeting have been posted on Dash on the city's website. And if you don't have those documents and you'd like to follow along, please feel free to access them now. So we have 5 agenda items this evening, and I'd like to share with you the format I'll be using as we navigate through each application. I'm going to start by introducing an applicant, and then I'll invite the applicant or their agent to add anything further to the application. If you have nothing further to add, then please just simply say so. Next, I'll turn the meeting over to the committee where they can have an opportunity to ask questions of the applicant or the agent, and then I'll open the public portion of the meeting. Now, it's during the public portion of the meeting, we'll invite members of the public to raise their virtual hand in Zoom if they have any questions or wish to make any comments in respect of the application. I'll be calling 3 times for public comments before I close the public portion of the meeting. Now, if you do have a question or wish to make a comment, please don't expect an immediate response because it's during the public portion of the meeting. We'll physically be recording the questions and comments, and it's only after I close the public portion of the meeting will those questions and comments be addressed by the applicant, their agent, or staff. Afterwards, when I close the public portion of the meeting, we'll come back to the applicant or staff to address the public comments, and then I'll turn to the committee, ask them to make a motion. We will deliberate on the application and make an ultimate decision. And then we just rinse and we repeat because I'm going to be using the same format for every application this evening. Now, if you have a personal interest in any particular application and you would like to receive written notice of tonight's decision, then please send an email with your name and address to the Secretary-Treasurer, Lindsay Stamen. Her email address is lsthamann@cityofkingston.ca. Be sure as well to include the file number of the application. So that's pretty much about it. So I'd now like to call on Elizabeth, our clerk, to confirm quorum. Elizabeth?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, I can confirm quorum at this time. I see that Mr. Fudge is also with us. I'm just going to ask if Mr. Fudge is able to turn on his camera or just unmute himself so that we can verify that he is present.
Okay, Blaine. Blaine, are you able to turn your audio and unmute your mic?
Mr. Chair, I did actually receive an email with regrets from Mr. Fudge, so I'm not entirely certain that this is that this is committee member Fudge. So I'm just going to we'll just continue forward and we won't count him towards quorum at this time. So we do have 3 members present, so we are still okay with quorum.
Good.
Currently absent from the meeting are Mr. Babin, Mr. Lightfoot, and Mr. Teknos-Levy as well.
Yes, okay.
Joining us from members of staff are James Barr, Manager of Development Approvals, Lindsay Stamen, Intermediate Planner and Secretary Treasurer for the committee, Amy Didrikson, Intermediate Planner, Anne-Marie Eusebio, Intermediate Planner, Ricardo Peggy, Planner, and Jennifer Liu, Intern Planner. We also have with us Blair Johnson as meeting host this evening. We have 6 agents or applicants in the meeting, as well as 3 members of the public at this time.
Great. Okay, thank you very much for that. All right, so I'll now call the meeting to order at 5:36 p.m. and I'll refer committee members to the agenda, please. So can I call for a motion to approve the agenda with the addendum? So just to confirm, everybody's received the addendum? We see sheds. Okay, so I'll call for a motion to approve the agenda with the addendum. And I think it was moved by Somnath and seconded by Vincent. Any discussion on that? So all in favor, raise your physical hands. And Blaine, too, are you? Okay, that's unanimously carried. Thank you. All right, and now we'll look for confirmation of the minutes of the June 20th meeting. Everybody's received them. You've had an opportunity to review them. So can I call for a motion to approve those? And it's moved by Vincent and seconded by Somnath. Any discussion? So all in favor, raise your physical hand. And Blaine, you too? Oh, it looks like his video is frozen. So, well, we've got 3, 4, and 1 will say abstain. So that would be carried. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? So I see none. And Blaine, I think your video is frozen. So if you can unmute your mic and just confirm that you do or do not have a disclosure of pecuniary interest. And it looks like he's bowed out of the room. Okay, must be a technical issue. So far we have no disclosures of pecuniary interest. There are no delegations and no requests for deferral. So we have our first returning deferred item, which is item number 7A, an application for minor variance. Lindsay, can I have you read this into the record, please?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Our first application tonight is for minor variance at 720 and 730 Innovation Drive. The file number associated with the application is D13028-2022. Amy Didrikson will give a presentation on behalf of the city for this application.
Great, thanks very much. And welcome, Amy.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, like Lindsay mentioned, this is a minor variance application for 720 to 730 Innovation Drive. Sorry, just trying to find my notes here. And the purpose of effect is to permit 25 total parking spaces in the front yard and exterior side yard of a proposed light industrial development. And this proposal is also undergoing a site plan control application, which is currently going through a technical review. Next slide, please. So you can see on the key map here that the subject site is a corner lot with approximately 168 meters of frontage. This is located in the east end of Kingston on Innovation Drive in the St. Lawrence Business Park. The lot is currently undeveloped and is surrounded by a variety of employment and complementary uses. And it's west of a city park you can see in the southeast of the aerial photo. The property is located in the urban area of Kingston and is designated Business Park Industrial in the Rideau Community Secondary Plan. The property is in a BP1 zone, which is specific to the St. Lawrence Business Park. And in zoning bylaw number 3274, in the citywide Kingston zoning bylaw, which is currently under appeal, the property is also in a business park zone, the M1 zone. Next slide, please. This is the site plan for the proposal that illustrates the proposed one-story light industrial building. It has approximately 1,250 square meters of gross floor area, and the 25 parking spaces requiring the variance are located in the areas highlighted by a red and purple rectangle. The red area outlined is the front yard where there are 3 parking spaces, and the purple area would be considered the exterior side yard where there are 22 parking spaces. The applicant has located the remaining parking spaces in what would be considered the rear yard at the west end of the site. And there's 8 meters of landscaping provided in a strip along the frontage, interrupted by the 2 driveway access points. Through the site plan control application, there will be a landscaping plan required to include plantings in the landscaped area to screen the parking. Next slide, please. So in order to facilitate the development, the applicant is seeking a variance to section 514D of zoning bylaw 3274, which limits the permitted percentage of required parking in the front and exterior yard to 15%. It's important to highlight that the tenants for the development have not been finalized at this time, but it's anticipated that most likely it will be 85% warehousing, and 15% office, which results in 23 required parking spaces according to zoning bylaw 3274. So the relief has been calculated based on this requirement, which results in a variance of 94% for the proposed 25 spaces. The proposal does include 45 total parking spaces, so beyond spaces beyond the required number of parking spaces. And this is intended to provide flexibility if the nature of the future use requires additional spaces, and warehousing does have the lowest parking rate in zoning bylaw 3274. So virtually any other tenant would require additional parking spaces. It's also important to note that the restriction on front and exterior side yard parking in a business park has not been carried forward into the citywide Kingston zoning bylaw. Section 7.4.10.4 of the Kingston zoning bylaw permits in the urban area for non-residential use that parking spaces can be located in the front yard, exterior yard, interior yard, or rear yard, provided they comply with site triangle provisions, and the proposal does comply with site triangle requirements in the new zoning bylaw. So as a result, there's no associated variance in the Kingston zoning bylaw. Next slide, please. With respect to public consultation, signs were posted on the property 10 days in advance of this meeting, and notices were sent by mail to 8 properties within 60 meters of the subject property. A courtesy notice was placed in the Kingston Whig Standard, and to date, no formal public comments have been received. Next slide, please. With respect to our recommendation, as detailed in the staff report before the committee, the requested variances maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan and the zoning bylaw in effect, and the Kingston zoning bylaw under appeal. And the proposal is desirable for the appropriate development or use of land and is considered minor. There are no adverse effects anticipated on adjacent properties or the area. The proposal maintains a consistent level of landscaping as other properties in the business park, where visual screening will be provided to screen front yard parking. And the design includes a functional and desirable parking layout where parking spaces are concentrated in the rear where possible, and where pedestrian and vehicular traffic is separated from loading zones. So as detailed further in the staff report before you, the proposed application meets all 4 tests under the Planning Act and is recommended for approval. That concludes my presentation, but if there's any questions I can answer during the discussion period, I'd be happy to.
Great. Thanks very much, Amy. So at this point, I'd like to call on the applicant or their agent to identify yourself by name and address for the record, please.
Mark Tao with IBI Groups. We're the planners for the owner.
Welcome. And do you have anything further to add to the application, Mark?
No, just thanks to staff for their work and bringing it forward. No other comments.
Great stuff. Okay, committee members, do you have any questions for Mr. Tao or planning staff? I'm seeing 4 shaking heads, including my own. So I'll now open the public portion of the meeting. Do we have any members of the public with us this evening who wish to speak to the application for 720 to 730 Innovation Drive? Please raise your virtual hand in Zoom. And do we have anybody with us this evening wishing to speak to the application for Innovation Drive? Please raise your virtual hand in Zoom. And my third and final call, is anybody with us this evening wishing to speak to the application for 720-730 Innovation Drive? Please raise your virtual hand. And I see none, so I'll close the public portion of the meeting and come back to the committee for a motion. So moved by Blaine and seconded by Vincent. Any discussion on this? None, so all in favor, raise your physical hand, and that's unanimously carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next piece of business we have is item number 7A, the first piece of new business, which is an application for minor variance for 35 to 39 Montreal Street. And Lindsay, can I have you read this into the record, please?
Through you, Mr. Chair, this is an application for minor variance file number D130202022 at 35 to 39 Montreal Street. Ricardo Peggi will give the presentation for this application.
Great, thanks very much. Welcome, Ricardo.
Hello, hello. Through you, Mr. Chair, this is an application for minor variance at the property at 39 Montreal Street. The applicant is proposing to split a 2-bedroom unit into 2 1-bedroom units in the existing building. No exterior modifications are proposed, and relief for several provisions are required. Next slide, please. The property is located on Montreal Street between Princess and Queen Streets in the downtown area. The property is designated Central Business District in the official plan and zoned Heritage Commercial in bylaw 96259 and Downtown Zone 2 in the comprehensive zoning bylaw 2262. Next slide, please. The proposal to split the 2-bedroom units into 2 1-bedroom units requires the following variances. The first is to increase the maximum density to 261 units per net hectare. Note that the 11th unit varied the density to 240 units per net hectare, and that was previously approved in 2020. The second is to decrease the amenity area from 10 square meters per unit to 0. And the third is for relief from the requirement to provide a bike parking space for the new unit. The last variance is for relief from the requirement to provide a vehicle parking space for the new unit. And note that the fourth variance is only required for the current zoning bylaw 96259. And zoning bylaw 2262 does not require an additional vehicle parking space for the new unit. Next slide, please. So the subject property is developed with a mixed-use building containing 3 commercial units and 11 residential units. The building currently utilizes the entire area of the property. The development has previous minor variance approvals to increase maximum density, reduce parking to 0, and to reduce amenity area to 0. The proposed variances in the current application are triggered just for the new unit. Next slide, please. So here you can see the floor plans for the 3rd floor. You can see the new unit to be split off from unit 11. And note that the proposal would take the unit count, the unit mix to 9 1-bedroom units and 3 2-bedroom units. Next slide, please. So in terms of public notice, signage was posted on site 10 days prior to this meeting. Notices were mailed to 46 surrounding property owners, and courtesy notice was placed in the WIG standard. No pieces of public correspondence have been received on this file. Next slide, please. So it's my recommendation to approve the minor variance as it maintains the general intent of the official plan and zoning bylaws. The proposed development is desirable for the appropriate development or use of the land, and the requested variances are minor in nature. Approval of this application will enable the internal conversion of a multi-use building to add 1 additional residential unit. Thanks very much. I'm happy to respond to any questions from the committee or public.
Great, thanks, Ricardo. So at this point, I'd like to call on the applicant or their agent to identify yourself by name and address, please.
Good evening. I'm Golsa Kirmogadam from Fulton. I am representing Dr. Zlatko Benish.
Okay, well, welcome, Golsa. Is there anything further you wish to add to the application?
No, and thanks to the staff for the great report.
Great, thank you. Okay, so committee members, do you have any questions for either the agent or staff? None? None at all. Okay, so at this point, I'll open the public portion of the meeting. Do we have any members of the public with us this evening wishing to speak to the application for 35 to 39 Montreal Street? Please raise your virtual hand in Zoom. And do we have members of the public with us this evening wishing to speak to the application for 35 to 39 Montreal Street? Please raise your virtual hand in Zoom. And my third and final call is anybody with us this evening wishing to speak to the application for 35 to 39 Montreal Street. Please raise your virtual hand in Zoom. And I see none. So I'll close the public portion of the meeting and come back to the committee for a motion. So moved by Blaine and seconded by Somnath. Any discussion? I do have one thing that I kind of want to say about this, that the variances that are listed are, we have 3 out of 4 variances that essentially go from a performance standard of something to absolutely nothing. I think some people might argue that that's not really minor in nature, but I'm certainly going to vote in favor of this because I think it's the overall effect of the variances really do not change what's currently happening on site, because the performance standards that sit there right now effectively remain unchanged with the conversion of with only the addition of or conversion of a unit to an additional bedroom. So I kind of just wanted to put that out there in case anybody ever looked at this to say, what, how can you consider these variances minor? But I think when you look at the whole bit, I think the effect of the variance is minor. So anyway, that's my spiel. So if we have nothing, nobody else wants to add anything to it, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, raise your physical hand. And that's unanimously carried. Thank you. Okay, the next piece of business we have is an item number 8B, which is an application for 23B Crerar Avenue. Lindsay, can I have you read this into the record, please?
Through you, Mr. Chair. 8B is an application for minor variance at 23B Crerar Boulevard. The file number is D13-031-2022, and Ricardo will also give the presentation for this application.
Great, thanks, and welcome again, Ricardo.
Yeah. All right. Hello again, and through Mr. Chair. This is an application for minor variance for the property at 23B Crerar Boulevard. The applicant is proposing to develop a driveway which exceeds the maximum width for driveways in the front yard. The purpose is to enable a second parking spot for a proposed second residential unit in the existing dwelling. Next slide, please. So the property is located about mid-block along Crerar Boulevard in the Redendale neighborhood. The property is designated residential in the official plan and zoned R2 in zoning bylaw 7626, and to be zoned UR2.A in zoning bylaw 2022-62. The property is currently developed with a semi-detached dwelling. Next slide, please. Relief is sought from both zoning bylaws to permit a driveway in the front yard, which is over 40% of the lot width, which is 10.7 meters. So the maximum driveway width is 4.3 meters. The applicant is proposing a 5.5 meter wide driveway, which equates to about 51% of the lot width. Next slide, please. Here you can see the site plan. The purpose of the minor variance is to enable a second parking space for the proposed secondary unit. The zoning bylaw requires that secondary residential units must be accessible by an unencumbered 1.2 meter wide walkway. The doorway to the units are located in the side yard, so the applicant is not able to use the existing side yard space for their driveway. So the applicant elected to provide the 2 parking spaces side by side in the front yard. Next slide, please. In terms of public notice, signage was posted on site 10 days prior to this meeting. Notices were mailed to 23 property owners within 60 meters of the site. and courtesy notice was placed in the Kingston WIG standard. Next slide, please. It is my recommendation to approve the minor variance as it maintains the general intent and purpose of the official plan and zoning bylaw. The proposed development is desirable for the appropriate development of the land, and the requested variance is minor in nature. Approval of this application will enable the development of a secondary dwelling unit, which will have access to a parking space. I'm happy to respond to any questions from the committee or public. Thanks.
Great. Thanks very much, Ricardo. So at this point, can I call on the applicant or their agent to identify yourself by name and record, please?
Hi, guys. Sorry, I'm just trying to get my, there we go. Hi, thanks for taking some time to listen to my variance tonight. Thank you. My name's Cam Wolf. I currently live at 1259 Woodbine Road in Kingston, and I don't really have anything to add. Ricardo was very helpful, kind of helping me walk through this. My first time going through the process, so thank you.
Great, thanks very much. All right, and welcome, Cameron. So committee members, do you have any questions for the applicant or their agent? Yes, Vincent.
So reading what you sent, so there was already a widened driveway that was done without a permit. And is this just you're widening it more so you can fit 2 cars in that one spot? Making sure I understand correctly.
Correct. So I'm not sure if you guys have seen the pictures in the application.
Yeah.
The driveway, it's kind of funny, short story. My mom used to live in the building beside there. So this driveway, ever since I can remember 10 years ago, has existed as it does. As you can see, if you see in the pictures, there's a lot of room there. So that existing, I guess that addition that has been put on the front lawn was always there, but I guess it's not quite wide enough for me to be able to accommodate the emergency services or a sidewalk. So that's why I'm asking for the extra, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any further questions of the committee? No, so I'll now open the public portion of the meeting and call on members of the public. If you are interested, if you have any questions or wish to make a comment in respect of the application for 23B Career Boulevard, please raise your virtual hand in Zoom. So do we have any members of the public with us this evening wishing to speak to the application for 23B Career Boulevard? Please raise your virtual hand in Zoom. And my third and final call, do we have anybody with us this evening wishing to speak to the application for 23B Career Boulevard? Please raise your virtual hand in Zoom. And I see none, so I'm going to close the public portion of the meeting and come back to the committee for a motion. So moved by Vincent and seconded by Somnath. Any discussion? No. So all in favor, raise your physical hand, and that is unanimously carried. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay, the next piece of business we have is an application for permission and minor variance. It's 8C and it's for 81 Gore Street. Lindsay, can I have you read this into the record, please?
Through you, Mr. Chair. This is an application for permission and minor variance at 81 Gore Street, file number D13-033-2022. Jennifer Liu will give the presentation for this application.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, everyone. The purpose of this application at 81 Gore Street is to demolish the existing one-story structure to be replaced by a larger 2-story addition at the rear of the principal residential unit. Permission and 4 minor variances are required in association with this proposal. Next slide, please. For your context, the property is located within the Old Sydenham Heritage Conservation District, surrounded by a neighborhood that is residential in character and generally consists of single-family dwellings, as is the property's residential designation in itself. Next slide, please. There are two elements to this application at 81 Gore Street. First, the applicant requires permission to expand an existing legal non-conforming dwelling. This permission is sought under both the existing zoning bylaw 8499 and the new zoning bylaw 2022-62, which is currently under appeal. The second element consists of 4 minor variance requests, and they are the aggregate minimum side yard provision, the maximum lot coverage provision, the maximum floor space index provision, and lastly, but not the least, the minimum parking space length provision. It is worth noting that the 4 minor variance requests are required under the current zoning bylaw 8499, under the new zoning bylaw 2022-62, which is currently under appeal. However, the only minor variance request that will remain relates to the minimum parking space length, with a reduction from the required 6 meters to 5.3 meters. It is also worth pointing out that a supplemental report, COA with reference COA-22-061, was prepared to clarify the proposed aggregate side yard setback, which should be 1.68 meters as opposed to the 1.98 meters, which was documented in the original COA report 2022-054. And that the resultant variance requested should be 1.92 meters as opposed to the 1.62 meters originally documented. To be clear, this clarification does not alter any of the rationale for the consideration in arriving at the recommendation to approve this application. Next slide, please. This is the proposed side plan at 81 Gore Street. If I can bring your attention to the blue highlight at the bottom left of this plan, this represents the 5.3 meter parking space length, which is to be varied from 6 meters as a result of a larger side addition to be constructed for the property. There are also 2 pink highlights on both sides of the site plan, middle left and a third to the bottom right, if you can find them because they're quite small. This is the aggregate side yard setback variance, which is to be reduced from the prescribed 3.6 meters in the current zoning bylaw. It is noted that the reduction does not prevent any access to the rear yard and does meet the general intent and purpose of the aggregate side yard setback provision. The other 2 minor variances relate to the maximum lot coverage exceeding the required 33%, and also the maximum floor space index, which is required to be 1, but the applicant, this application is marginally over. Please note that the subject property does meet the minimum landscape open space requirement, irrespective of the 2 that is in breach. Overall, the property after the completion of the proposed development will be compatible with the surrounding neighborhood in terms of scale, style, and massing, as well as the surrounding uses. No adverse effects as a result of this development are anticipated. This is a relatively minor addition to the footprint of the dwelling, but will allow for more generous living space. Next slide, please. In terms of public consultation, a sign was posted on the property, notices were mailed, and a courtesy advert appeared in the Kingston Whig Standard. Since the finalization of this presentation, we have received no public comments on this application. Next slide, please. The planning department recommends approval of this application subject to the conditions in Exhibit A and B of the supplemental report with reference COA-22-061. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, and I shall give the floor back to you, Mr. Chair.
Great. Thanks very much, Jennifer. And I forgot to welcome you at the beginning of the meeting, so welcome.
Thank
But
you.
thanks for that. Okay, so at this point, I'd like to call on the applicant or their agent to identify yourself by name and address for our record, please.
Thank you, Jennifer, for that great presentation. So I'm Davin Johnson, and I'm one of the, my wife and I live at 81 Gore Street. And we're also joined tonight by Todd Bigerman, who's our designer, and he's available if there's any questions as well. Thank you.
Great, thank you and welcome. And is there anything further you want to add to the application we have?
No, I apologize for my error with the previous measurement. I guess my assumption was that the house was parallel to the property line, but that's the one thing about living in Sydenham Ward, the irregular lot line. So thanks very much for catching that.
Okay, thank you. And committee members, we did receive the addendum, the supplement today, and the supplement dealt with that variance, just the change to that one number, just to refresh your memory on that. Okay, so committee members, do you have any questions for the applicant or staff? And I have none, so I'll open the public portion of the meeting. Do we have any members of the public with us this evening wishing to speak to the application for 81 Gore Street? Please raise your virtual hand in Zoom. And do we have any members of the public with us in the gallery this evening wishing to speak to the application for 81 Gore Street? Please raise your virtual hand in Zoom. And my third and final call is anybody with us this evening wishing to speak to the application for 81 Gore Street. Please raise your virtual hand in Zoom. And I see none, so I'm going to close the public portion of the meeting and come back to the committee for a motion. So moved by Blaine and seconded by Somnath. And any discussion on this? Yes, Elizabeth? Oh, sorry, we have two motions. Is that it? Okay. Yeah, so we have two motions. So I'm sorry, the first motion is to accept the supplemental report. And then the second one will be to vote on the original application as it was amended. So the first motion that we have on the table is a motion to accept the supplemental report. So can I call for a mover? So moved by Blaine and seconded by Somnath. All right, any discussion? So all in favor, raise your physical hand, and that's unanimously carried. Thank you. All right, and now the second motion is to vote on the original application as amended. So can I have a mover for that? Moved by Blaine and seconded by Vincent. Any discussion on that? None. So all in favor, raise your physical hand, and that's unanimously carried. Thank you. And thanks for the tweak there, Elizabeth. All right. Thanks, Davin.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Okay. All right. And our last piece of business is an application for minor variance number 8D for 151 Bath Road. So Lindsay, can I have you read this into the record, please?
Through you, Mr. Chair, our last application for tonight is an application for minor variance at 151 Bath Road. The file number is D13042-2021, and Anne-Marie Eusebio is the city planner assigned to this application.
Great, thank you, and welcome, Anne-Marie.
Hello, good evening. Chair, committee, staff, and members of the public. This minor variance application is for 151 Bath Road, which is for the new Canadian Tire retail store. This application is also subject to a site plan control application that is currently in review. Next slide, please. The purpose and effect of the application is to construct a new Canadian Tire retail store. Additional components of the proposal include an automotive center, office space, and warehouse storage for the store, and an attached garden center. The overall gross floor area of the proposed development will be 10,897 square meters. The proposed development will replace the existing Canadian Tire store that is currently located within the Kingston Center at 59 Bath Road. Next slide, please. The applicant is seeking relief from the applicable provisions of zoning bylaw 8499 to reduce the parking rates, to reduce the number of on-site loading spaces, to reduce the minimum front yard setback from Bath Road, and to reduce the minimum front yard setback from Sir John A. Macdonald Boulevard. The property is not subject to the zoning provisions of the new zoning bylaw 2022-62. Next slide, please. This is the key map of the subject property. It is situated within the Kingston Center, a commercial, retail, and shopping area on a northeast corner of Sir John A. Macdonald Boulevard and Bath Road. Commercial uses located within the Kingston Center include pharmacies, retail stores, banks, and restaurants. The site contains the Kingston Center bus transfer point, and the site is surrounded by commercial, institutional, and residential uses. There is a high-rise residential development along Sir John A. Macdonald Boulevard and Bath Road, and the site is across from office uses, a commercial plaza, and restaurants along Princess Street. Next slide, please. The property is designated district commercial in the official plan. The goal of this designation is to provide for convenient commercial focus for surrounding neighborhoods for a range of frequently used goods and services. Next slide, please. The site is located within a site-specific shopping center commercial C3-84 zone in zoning bylaw 8499. The proposed Canadian Tire store, automotive center, garden center, and warehousing for the store are permitted uses within the zone. Next slide, please. The slide shows the location of the new Canadian Tire store and associated parking on the subject property. Other components include various internal pedestrian connections relating to linkages to the bus transfer station and the multiple sidewalks and a 3-meter asphalt multi-use pathway which will run along Sir John A. Macdonald Boulevard to Elmwood Street. There will be the establishment of a new landscaping within the surrounding parking areas and along Sir John A. Macdonald Boulevard and Bath Road. These will be reviewed through the site plan control process. Next slide, please. These are the elevation plans. Next slide, please. And these are the following variances requested for the application. Variance number 1 is to reduce the parking rate from 4.8 spaces per 92.9 square meters of gross leasable area to 3.34 spaces per 92 square meters of gross leasable area. The reduced parking rate is supported by the parking study submitted by the applicants. 10 accessible spaces will also be provided. The reduced parking rate is appropriate for the proposed development on the site and is compliant with all parking related provisions. The second variance is that the applicant is requesting relief to reduce the required total of 11 loading spaces to 2 loading spaces. The reduced number of loading spaces will not significantly impact the site circulation or require the occupation of customer parking spaces or drive aisles. Proposed number of loading spaces will meet the operational needs of the retail store and will not impact the overall functionality of the site. Next slide, please. The applicant is proposing to reduce the minimum front yard setback from Bath Road from 38 meters to 6 meters, and to reduce the minimum front yard setback from Sir John A. Macdonald Boulevard from 38 meters to 6.5 meters. Proposal will result in a development that is similar to the front yard setback of existing buildings on the site along Sir John A. Macdonald Boulevard and Bath Road, and represents a reasonable form of development. Additional landscaping treatments will be installed to soften the building edge along Sir John A. Macdonald Boulevard, and the proposed landscaping will provide a buffer between the proposed developments and the existing residential uses on the west side of Sir John A. Macdonald Boulevard. The proposal is compatible with the existing commercial uses within the Kingston Center, as well as the surrounding commercial uses, and will not result in significant impacts or changes to the immediate area. Next slide, please. As mentioned earlier, the subject proposal is going through the site plan control application review. We have received a site plan control application for the proposal, and the following will be reviewed through the site plan control review process, which include active transportation enhancements, the multi-use pathway, and also the internal pedestrian linkages, the construction of a signalized access, traffic impacts, noise impacts, stormwater management, servicing, and landscaping and tree preservation. All the appropriate studies have been submitted as part of the site plan control review. Next slide, please. With respect to public consultations, signs were posted on the subject site 10 days in advance of the meeting. Notices were sent by email to a total number of 13 property owners within 60 meters of the subject property. To date, 3 pieces of correspondence have been received. Next slide, please. The proposed retail use is permitted within the shopping center commercial C3 zone and is compatible with the intent of the district commercial designation of the official plan and the surrounding commercial land uses. The requested variance maintains the general intent and purpose of both the City of Kingston official plan and zoning bylaw 8499. Proposal is desirable for the appropriate development or use of land, building, or structure, and requested variances are minor in nature. As such, the proposed application meets the 4 tests of the Planning Act, and the application is recommended for approval subject to the proposed conditions. Thank you very much for your time, and that concludes my presentation. I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Great. Thanks very much, Anne Marie. Now, before we go forward in this, I just want to establish a point of clarification on page 110 of the package. The variance number 1, the application, I think this is just clerical, but the variance doesn't establish what it's for, although it's implied, I think, for parking, but it just doesn't say it. I think it should say variance number 1, parking, site-specific shopping center. Although your presentation, your last slide did put that in there. So I just want to, I guess, let the record reflect that the public document should have that included. And the other point is on page 119 of the application as well, under the recommendation. It does not have the word parking anywhere associated with the first variance. And I think that was pretty much intended, like, it's intended to have the word parking in there. Would that be correct?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, Chair, that is correct. Thank you.
Okay, good. All right, thanks. So for on this point, I'd like to invite the applicant or their agent to identify yourself by name and address, please.
Good evening. My name is Pam White. I'm a planner at Parsons and agent for the applicant, Canadian Tire Real Estate.
Great, and thank you and welcome to our meeting. And is there anything further you wish to add to the application?
I want to thank staff for their report and support the recommendations, and we're here to answer any questions that the committee may have or staff.
Thanks very much. So committee members, do you have any questions for the agent or for staff? Yeah, so Blaine.
Try this. Okay, technical difficulties fixed. Quick question. I didn't see the package, but the variance of the property line, is that going to make it more in line with the current Loblaw store and the other retail spaces along Bath Road? Like, are we encroaching the roads closer? It's just a clarification.
Oh, good question. Anne Marie, maybe did you want to address that?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. The proposed building will be in line with the existing Loblaw's store, as well as existing development along Bath Road.
Okay, good. Thanks for that. Any other questions of committee members? Yes, Vincent.
Yeah, I had a similar question as Blaine, but I had another one also. In the correspondence, somebody mentioned that it appeared to them that they were eliminating a sidewalk from Sir John A. and Elmwood without replacement. I'm not sure if you could clarify if that is happening or not.
Through you, Mr. Chair, there will be the relocation of that access. There will be a 3-meter wide multi-use pathway that is being proposed, which will run along Sir John A. Macdonald and over to Elmwood Street, which will provide a pedestrian linkage into not just the Canadian Tire, but also the Kingston Center in general. So it's not necessary, it is a removal, but it is a relocation. The intent, from what I understand and contained in the report, is to improve the pedestrian linkage through that 3-meter multi-use pathway to provide a safe linkage through Elmwood Street into the Canadian Tire site. Thank you.
Great. Oh, and James, did you want to? And James and then Pamela. So
through you, Mr. Chair, I'll let Pam speak first on this. She did have her hand up, sure. So she beat me to the punch. I'll give her the floor. Okay.
Thanks, James. Thanks, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to also point out that the relocation of the sidewalk with internal to the site as well. So that sidewalk connection from Elmwood to the transfer station is reestablished along the north end at that connects with the Elmwood intersection, and then also connects to the other commercial uses in the site.
Okay, good. And James, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, we do understand the functional question by members of the public because the site has been utilized in a different manner for a number of years now. There are a number of informal pathways through the large green space on the site, but the functionality is going to remain. So there are existing connections in from Elmwood, as well as the intersection for the internal driveway located along the south side of the property, which would be on the, if you're looking at exhibit, for a quick second, if you're looking at exhibit G of the report, page 131 of the overall document, you can see that along the left-hand side, there's a blue stripe. That's the multi-use path that has been referenced. Along the south side, you can see a narrow gray kind of line across there. That's our typical municipal sidewalk, which will remain, and it will connect the intersection to the bus station that's there, as well as that indicated north-south internal driveway, of which there is an existing north-south pedestrian connection on the east side of that driveway. And along the very top of the site, you can see a large gray band as well, broken up by the kind of drive aisle. That is also another pedestrian connection that's being established to help formalize access into the site from the Elmwood Sir John A intersection. So pedestrian functionality has been thought through rather extensively with this site to ensure that there is connectivity because of the existence of the transit terminal in the middle and the city's push for greater emphasis on active transportation for the site. And in our discussions with Canadian Tire as well, they are providing both short and long-term bike parking spaces. So there is bicycle parking actually being located outside of this building, which is new for us to have the conversations about, how to integrate bike parking into what would typically be more auto-oriented development, and providing those spaces so that pedestrians, vehicles, and bikes can all start to accommodate space in the city.
Good. All right. Thanks very much for that clarification. Okay,
yeah,
committee
it looks
members.
like it'll be improved. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Vincent.
I was just gonna say, it looks like it would be improved over what's there right now without a sidewalk on the left.
Yeah.
On Sir John A.
Yeah, through you, Vincent. I think that's a great way to summarize that. It's a big improvement for the formal accesses through this site, rather than maybe go past through the snow in the winter. They'll be more maintained and provide suitable, pedestrian connectivity through the site.
Good. Thanks for that. Committee members, any other questions for the applicant or staff? I sort of do have one for Pamela. Pam, there was a piece of correspondence that came through a little beyond the purview of the committee, but it was a recommendation for making the world a little greener by putting solar panels on the roof. I don't know, is that something that you guys, is that something that's considered during the planning process?
Yeah, so there are some sustainability features that Canadian Tire typically looks at as part of their stores. I don't believe that they have specifically looked at solar panels for the roof of this store. Just a question that we can pose back to Canadian Tire for a response.
Yeah, beyond the purview of us, but I thought it was a very interesting comment from the public. So it'd be nice to have that to ensure that's been passed upward. Okay, so no further questions. I'll open the public portion of the meeting. Do we have any members of the public with us this evening wishing to speak to the application for 151 Bath Road? Please raise your virtual hand in Zoom. And do we have any members of the public with us this evening wishing to speak to the application for 151 Bath Road? Please raise your virtual hand. And do we have anybody with us this evening wishing to speak to the application for 151 Bath Road, the Canadian Tire store? Please raise your virtual hand in Zoom. And seeing none, I'll close the public portion of the meeting, and come back to the committee for a motion. So moved by Vincent and seconded by Blaine. Any discussion? No. So everybody shaking their head no. So all in favor, raise your physical hand. And that's unanimously carried. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, committee, staff, thanks.
Okay, so that's it for our new business. So next, we have no motions this evening, no notices of motion. There's no other business. Now, there was one piece of correspondence, a number of pieces of correspondence actually, related to 39 Ellerbeck Street. So everybody has had an opportunity to review it. Yeah. Do you have any comments on it at all? it's a little beyond what our role is here in Committee of Adjustment, but it certainly was nice, I found, to be updated and apprised of kind of what happens after the fact on some applications after a committee has made a decision. But I know we discussed some of this at the last meeting. Do you want to further the discussion? Not much to say, no. I thought that Ms. Agnew did a really good job of responding to the issues, and I was really impressed with that Mr. Park and Lisa Carpenter Hunt, I believe, went out with the some of the complainants to meet on site and to discuss this further, and to actually refer some of these issues up the chain, certainly to building enforcement. I think if there's a problem, or if there have been some cheeky things going on, that hopefully they will be, I'm glad that they were brought to light, and somebody will, hopefully somebody within the city will look at it seriously and take appropriate action. But anything else anybody wants to mention about that or add to it? Okay, so there's not much more we can really say about that. And then, of course, we had the additional correspondence from Mr. Drummond on Bath Road. Okay. All right. So nothing further to that. So I guess the date of our next meeting is on Monday, August 22nd. So at this point, we're just looking for a motion to adjourn. So moved by Blaine and seconded by Somnath. All in favor, raise your physical hand. And that's unanimously carried. So meeting adjourned at 6:27 p.m. Thanks, everybody. See you in 4 weeks. Bye-bye.